Former Binghamton City Councilman is running for office once again. Previously a Democrat representing District 9, John Cordisco is running to represent Binghamton's 4th District as a Republican. Cordisco has worked for the past 17 years at his convenience store, Cordisco's Corner Store, on Shenango Street. He's been off of City Council since 2007, but says he is eager to get back on the job.
The day I'm sworn in, I just go back right where my experience takes me, and I know everything there is to know about the job. It's a difficult one, but it's good to have new people. But this time, with the problems that we're having and the huge financial problems coming, I think somebody with experience is a much better choice.
Cordisco represented District 9 from 2000 to 2007. He served as council president in 2006. Cordisco says if he's elected, he wants to focus on lowering taxes.
Hi folks, John Cordisco here. A pretty interesting game. Really neat game actually, from round 8 of the European Individual Chess Championship 2015 being played in Jerusalem between two really interesting players, Ian and Nepomniachtchi from Russia and David Howell from England. If you remember, David came in a very strong second in the Gibraltar tournament a few weeks ago. My buddy Carl Nakamura got first in that one. If you remember, David Howell's the one that kind of, I use the word loosely, stole, quote-unquote, a draw from a Carl. Carl would have had a perfect score in that tournament, but David kind of pulled off a draw that Carl missed it in a real complicated rook and pawn ending. Anyway, let's get to it. Nepomniachtchi is white. David Howell is black. It's going to be in English, 4 knights. I kind of like the English 4 knights myself, frankly. Bishop. Interesting thing there. I'm just curious as to why. Knight takes c3 is the choice of the computer, and that's a line obviously David didn't want to play. Knight to b6 is number 2. Now it's kind of creeping up to number 1. Knight takes c3. I probably would play knight takes c3, forcing the b pawn to take so it wouldn't trade queens this early, but who might have doubt these guys? They're world-class players. a3. I did want to mention, just for fun, I'm going to throw in a TV interview I did today. Probably why I haven't had a lot of time in the last few days to run my videos. I'm running for local Binghamton City Council seats, a city I live in upstate New York, Binghamton. And I was a former council member about 8 years ago, so I'm going to throw in the interview piece. And you guys get to see what I really look like. Hopefully it's not a bad thing. Bishop, b4, get some room on the queen side. Push around his knights a little bit eventually. Castles, a5. b5 makes the knight move. Knight goes to d4. Rook to b1, protect the pawn there. Knight takes f3. Interesting. Bishop takes, rook b8. Okay. Tiny advantage for black at this point. We're on move 12. d3, of course, get the dark squared bishop out. Obviously, he either wants to control this square or make an escape for his bishop. Doesn't want to put the bishop here, I don't think, because it blocks the rook. Castles, but he does it anyway. I knew that. I went over the game earlier. I just did that for fun. f5, here come the pawns. David's an aggressive player. But one thing David does, and I don't think he has trouble in this game, but David's notorious for getting into time trouble. Bishop g2 brings the bishop back. Bishop d6. I'm not so sure on that. Let's take a look at this. What the computer thinks. Knight to a4 is the computer's choice, and that's not exactly a lousy choice either. But bishop g2, bishop d6, a4. Okay, finally got his pawns connected there. This knight's in an interesting spot. Queen e7, queen c2. Oddly enough, if this is really unusual. White hasn't moved the z-pawn at all, and he only moved his d-pawn to d3. He has no center control at all with his pawns. He's kind of cramped. Queen to f7, he moves the queen again. Bishop c1. Knight finally moves. f4. Okay, he's going for it. He's going to open it up. Now, interesting what move David makes. He goes king to h8. Why, I really don't know. It's an even game with that. The computer like knight to f6. e4. Pawn takes f5. That was the computer selection. But after king to h8, pawn takes, knight takes. If bishop had taken after e3, knight to f6. Still an even game. After knight takes, knight to e4. Of course, we all see why he can't take the pawn. The rook pins to the queen. Bishop b4. Bishop f5. Excuse me, f4. Knight g4. The computer doesn't show a question mark on that move, but I think it should be. Black's, the game is slowly slipping away. Knight to d7 is the computer's choice. He goes g4. Now, off screen, I have my first 13 computer, and it's an over 2-point advantage now for white. Knight to g5, hitting the queen. Queen moves. This doesn't look that bad for black, but the computer shows it as a 2-point deficit for white. I think for us amateurs, it's not the end of the world. But what Nepomniachtchi does now is interesting. He plays rook takes b4. Now, the computer like queen takes c7, and so did the commentators. I mean, at the time when I was watching this, you can watch it on livestream.com. Just punch in European Individual Chess Championship, and you'll see it come up, and you can watch any round you want, some of the interviews with the players. After queen takes, queen moves, rook takes, pawn takes, h3. And that's a pretty good advantage for white. He's got a bishop and a pawn for the rook. After rook takes, pawn takes, queen takes, he just reversed the order. And it does make a world of difference, because now it's a half-point advantage for white. The computer likes very much queen takes, bishop takes. David decides to block and goes bishop to d7. Huge mistake. Now we're on move 25. I don't recall offhand what the times were. David is notorious for getting in time trouble. To give you an idea, if queen had taken bishop takes, bishop a2, bishop takes rook, rook takes, tiny advantage for white. White's up a pawn, but I think black might be able to hold this. But after bishop d7, queen d6, queen takes e2, he sacrifices the bishop, and this is where he plays rook over, and it's a disaster. And the computer actually says the final mistake, not that it matters anymore. Queen to e6, David is completely miscalculated. Something happened. Queen takes, knight takes, rook over, knight to c7. We'll go through the final moves here. Rook to e2, bishop takes, knight takes, it's over. Bishop takes, knight takes f1, b6, that pawn can't be stopped. Knight, b7, knight. He's looking for some kind of bizarre mating net, but it's not going to happen. White queens, and that's where he finally gives it up. What's he going to do? Give you an idea, even after he checks. King to g2, check. King to f1, check. King to g1, check. What else is he going to do? He's stuck. Knight checks, king moves. This is how the computer's choices. King to g8. And watch this beautiful mate here. Bishop checks, double check, discovered mate. How cool is that? Pretty cool. Show that again. Very rarely you're going to ever see this. Of course, this is the computer scenario why black resigned. discovered double check mate. Try to say that with a mouthful. Anyway, folks, tough break for David. Nepomniachtchi is doing really well. I believe he's in the leaderboard. If you go to the website 2700chess.com and scroll down, you'll be able to see the link for this tournament to go to the homepage for it. If you go to livestream.com, you'll be able to see any round you want and all the video from it and some of the interviews. And I also want to mention I'm going to put in some of my upcoming videos, and I'm going to put a link in the bottom for this one, is a friend of mine's come up with a very, very good and clever and very unique and incredibly cool new chess clock. So I'm going to leave the link below for that, so look for that. Anyway, folks, I want you all to remember, if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.
This is Shelby from American Chess Equipment, and I'd like to introduce the GMS 300 chess clock. Due to come out in a couple months, I nicknamed it the Gorilla. I love this clock. It's a culmination of everything I've wanted ever since I've started selling at chess tournaments. During that time, I've listened to a lot of customers. You hear everything they say about their clocks. What's good, what's bad. Me, I wrote everything down. And we've tried to put all those refinements into this chess clock. Now, you have to ask yourself, what makes this clock different? Yes, other clocks on the market have a metal case. Makes it sturdy. Try to make it as indestructible as possible, especially for those of you who have kids or who like to drop stuff. A refinement on this clock is the displays are 30% larger. And by making them 30% larger, we actually get to show you what the clock is set for before you start the game. So there's no more guessing. Did my opponent set the clock right? This clock is set for 40-2, sudden death in 1 with 5-second delay. It shows it right on the bottom. Now, these clocks also have what's called a data transfer point. Why would you want a data transfer point? Because it allows clock-to-clock transfer of settings. What this means is, if a tournament director has a clock completely set, he can go in and in the menu, click the center to get to the menu, toggle through to data transfer, hit the center button. Now, there are 3 ways you can transfer it over. There's copy current time control, which is just for what the clock is set for right now. You can copy the user controls, which are pretty much your favorites, and you can duplicate the whole clock. What you do, take any clock you want to set, plug it in. I would normally just use user controls. Plug the other clock into this clock, turn the other clock on, and as soon as both clocks are plugged in and on, and we're on this setting here, you would hit the center button, boom, shoots the setting over to the other clock. No more taking 2 to 3 to 5 minutes to set a clock. Those days are gone. Now, this clock is 100% USA made, USA manufactured. It's out of Texas. These guys know how to make chess clocks. You're going to get great customer service. I guarantee you're not going to be dissatisfied with this clock.